My wife declared an open marriage and was cheating on me, so I filed for divorce and demanded a DNA test. Morning light filtered through the curtains and the remnants of a relentless headache forced me out of bed. I stumbled into the bathroom swallowing 2 aspirin and leaned against the sink hoping my queasy stomach would settle. I am Ron Jamon, and yesterday my world turned upside down. After a long day at work I walked into our home unaware of the emotional wreckage waiting for me. Chrissy, my wife, looked at me with a mixture of love and sadness. She confessed that she had been involved with another man for the past year. She described their relationship as a lifeline for him, a man shattered by a car accident that claimed his wife's life while he escaped unscathed. Chrissy explained how she tried to mend his broken spirit, how their connection deepened into love and eventually physical intimacy. She assured me that her feelings for me had not changed and promised that she would come back when this man no longer needed her. She promised to return when this man no longer needed her, to remain present for our children, and to balance her life between our family and her commitment to this man who she believed would eventually move on. In my stunned state, this revelation felt like a sucker punch. I lashed out at her, calling her names in a futile attempt to make sense of the betrayal. She argued that if I loved her, I would accept this situation as painful as it was. The conversation left me struggling with a storm of emotions, questioning everything I thought I knew about love, loyalty, and marriage. Chrissy was clearly disappointed and angry with me. I was furious, and to avoid hitting her, I started drinking and yelling. When I calmed down a bit, I asked her how she would feel if I found another woman who wanted you. Chrissy scoffed. You're an overweight middle-aged man. Aged man with thinning hair. She warned that if I tried to divorce her she would ruin me. I was furious and confused about what to do. My mind was in total meltdown and I couldn't think logically. I continued to drink and yell at Chrissy. She packed a bag and said, I'm leaving to be with my lover until you calm down and accept the situation. I didn't remember much after that. Sitting on our bed I decided to take stock. Chrissy was right. I was middle-aged, my hair was thinning, and I was a mess. 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 My hair was thinning and I was about 20 pounds overweight. I couldn't change my age, but I could do something about my hair and my weight. First I had to find out where my kids were. It was Saturday morning, so they should be home. After searching the house I realized they weren't anywhere. Had Chrissy taken them? I was about to call her parents when I heard a car in the driveway. It was Chrissy's car and I saw our kids. As I got out I met Chrissy at the door. Good, you're sober, she snapped. Where were the kids? I asked. They were with me. I couldn't leave them with you. You didn't take them to your lover's house, did you? I hissed. Ron, watch your language, she snapped again. They were already there. My friend is kind, unlike you or yesterday. I wouldn't dare leave them with you. Fair point, I admitted, but why didn't you take the kids to your parents' place? They weren't there. Chrissy, I said. I'm sorry. I'm sorry they weren't home, Chrissy said as she went upstairs. I followed her. Are you staying here or going back to your lover? Oh Ron, stop being childish. I've told you how things are going to be. I'm not going to argue about it. The discussion is over. Accept it or don't. Even if you're acting like an idiot, I still love you. When he doesn't need me anymore I'll be back full time. So what do we do now? I'm packing a few things to spend a few days with my girlfriend until you cool down and accept the situation. What about the kids? I was hoping to shame her into staying, but it didn't work. If you don't want to watch them, call my parents. They will. Chrissy packed another bag and left, leaving my head ready to explode, but I knew I had to keep it together for the kids. I wasn't going to take Chrissy's affair lying down. No self-respecting man would. After Chrissy left, I checked on the kids and asked if they had any homework. They all groaned, but agreed to get started when I promised we'd visit their grandparents. Chrissy's parents loved going there, after all, because Pop helped them build go-karts. Chrissy's parents, Sam and Mary, lived on a small farm nearby. Sam, a retired hobbyist, had a large workshop where they worked on the go-karts. Sometimes I helped, too. I was a certified mechanic at the local Ford dealership, and I wanted to talk to Chrissy's parents to see if they knew about her boyfriend and to get their advice. I'd always had a great relationship with them and considered them my surrogate parents since mine lived far away, but I was worried that they might side with Chrissy. Ron Jr., the oldest at 16, was a football player but not big enough for a college scholarship. Sally, 15, was a typical teenager and a great student. Kyle, the youngest at 11, was a happy accident and a happy-go-lucky kid. While the kids worked, I made coffee and started a list of things to do. I called my boss Bob Clarkson to fill him in on my situation. I had worked at the dealership since it opened 23 years ago and Bob had been my boss for 15 years. He was sympathetic, having seen his son go through a messy divorce where his ex-wife made false accusations against him. I said, she is a cold bitch. Tell me about it, Bob said bitterly. For a week we expected the police to arrest Gary. These accusations are devastating and hard to disprove. The police get scared every time a woman accuses a man. The only thing that saved Gary was his ex-mother-in-law when Carol Old told her mother that she was a witch. When Carol told her mother that Gary was abusing her granddaughter, she thought it would ruin him. Bev, known for being ruthless but fair, immediately took her granddaughter to the doctor to see if she had been abused. The doctor confirmed that she had not. Bev went to the police and threatened to testify against her daughter if they pressed charges. She also warned Carol that she would expose the pills. I said I was shocked at what women can do to get their way. Amen to that, Bob replied. If there is anything I can do to help you, let me know. If it is in my power, I will make it happen. I asked for the next week off, using my personal days and vacation time. Bob agreed and even offered more time if needed. I said, I need a good divorce lawyer. That's easy, Bob said. Use the lawyer my son used. He cleaned Carol's watch. Gary got primary custody, kept the house, and Carol has to pay child support. His name is Dwight Tucker. I think I have his number. The uglier my son's divorce got, the more I heard Tucker's name in my sleep. Bob found Dwight Tucker's card. I called his office, not expecting anyone to answer on a Saturday, but luck was with me. Not only was Mr. Tucker there, but his secretary told me he had a cancellation and could see me if I arrived in 30 minutes. I told the kids I had to go out for an hour and to behave. I drove to Mr. Tucker's office and made it in 20 minutes. Dwight Tucker, a good-looking man in his early to mid-40s, was there. Good-looking man in his early middle. What can I do for you today? Dwight asked as I sat down. My wife told me yesterday that she's been cheating on me with a younger man, I said, embarrassed and angry. I explained what had happened the day before. Dwight took notes and shook his head when I mentioned that my wife claimed she still loved me but planned to keep seeing this guy. He stopped me. Let me get this straight, Dwight said. His eyes darkened. Your wife says she loves you but will keep seeing this guy. Embarrassed, I nodded. Okay, go ahead. Dwight encouraged me. I explained that Chrissy got angry when I refused to go along with her plan. I admitted that I called her a tramp and a hooker. I painfully recounted how Chrissy laughed when I asked her how she'd feel if I found another woman. She belittled me, saying no woman would want me and promised to ruin me if I tried to date another woman. No offense, Mr. Jamon, but your wife is either extremely callous or has serious mental problems. No offense, I sighed. I think the same thing. I then told him how she left the kids at her lover's house during our argument. Dwight's head snapped up and he smiled before jotting something down. Now for the 64th question. What are you going to do? Dwight asked, wringing his fingers. I can't live with this situation, I replied after a moment. I don't know if I can get through this, but I don't want to. I don't want to be destroyed in a divorce or lose my children. Dwight nodded sympathetically. That's common with women who face divorce because of their bad behavior, but I'm going to work hard to minimize any damage she can do. You'll get at least 50% of your community property, but the courts don't care about infidelity, so you may have to pay child support. I felt deflated. Despite Dwight's assurance, it seemed I was being taken to the cleaners. Yes, it's possible, but that's why we have to act quickly, Dwight said, studying his notes. Your wife has abandoned the marital home and left your children with her lover. That's a big no in some courts. You have custody now, and we can try to keep it that way. I'm going to file an emergency restraining order against your wife, allowing you to stay in the house temporarily. The longer you stay, the stronger your case for primary custody will be. She works part-time at the hospital on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, I answered, then added that's probably where she met this guy. Dwight agreed and asked how much she made. I said, $25,000 a year, while I made about $80,000. I have to ask a crucial question and I want you to think hard, Dwight said, looking directly at me. Do you still love her? Do you want to try to work things out? I stared at the floor for a long time. When I looked up, tears were streaming down my face. I do love her. But I can't accept this situation. She has humiliated me and broken her vows. I just want a divorce. Last question, Dwight said, turning to a clean sheet of paper. Tell me about your assets. I quickly went through our assets and explained we had about $3,500 in checking, $44,000 in savings, and a $20,000 CD. I had about $150,000 in my 401k, while Chrissy had a little less in her retirement plan from her full-time job at the hospital. We also had 2 cars in both our names and a house with little equity as we maxed out the loan when we bought it a few years ago. Here's what I want you to do, Dwight said, looking ready for battle. Withdraw half the savings checking and CD amounts and put it in a separate account in your name only. I can't touch the CD without Chrissy's signature, I explained. No problem, Dwight said. Calculate. Take $33,750 from savings, pay as many house bills as you can from checking, cancel the joint credit cards, and get a new one in your name only. I still have a credit card from before we were married, I said. I don't use it much because our joint card offers cash back. Even better, Dwight smiled. You won't need a new card. Dwight wrote a list of instructions and handed it to me. Go to my secretary and have her call Taylor Locksmith. Miss Carlson quickly got Taylor Locksmith on the phone. They said they'd be here around noon. I returned to Dwight's office as I finished a call. We're in luck, he said. If I fax my paperwork today, we'll get Judge Johnson. Why is that lucky? I asked. He hates cheaters. Dwight smiled. HEK, an old-fashioned Bible Belt judge who despises cheating. Dwight smiled. If he wasn't available, I'd have to work harder, but Judge Johnson was a friend of my father's, or he won't mind if I call him at home." Dwight stood and offered his hand. Gratefully, "Before you go home, Dwight instructed you to take care of your bank business. I am preparing a petition for an emergency restraining order against your wife. She will not be allowed in your house or within 500 feet of you or your children since she is with her lover and left your children there. I'll have her served with divorce papers, then we'll see how she reacts." For the first time since Chrissy dropped her bombshell, I felt like I was taking back control. The bank wasn't busy, so I quickly got a cashier's check for my share of the money and closed our joint credit card, paying off its $537 balance from the checking account. I also paid the mortgage 2 months in advance, which used another $2,600. With the cashier's check in hand, I went to another bank and opened accounts in my name only. When I got home, the kids were watching TV. I loaded them into the car and drove to my in-laws. A minute later Sam joined us. "I have something difficult to say," I began. "Chrissy is having an affair and I am filing for divorce." "I don't believe you," Sam said sharply. "What proof do you have?" she told me. I replied softly. Tears were streaming down my face. Just then the kids came in. "Please stay outside for a few minutes," I told them. Ron Jr. asked because I had to go to the bank. Ron Jr. saw my tears and immediately pushed his siblings back out. "She told you?" Mary asked incredulously. "Yes," I said firmly. I recounted the previous evening, including Chrissy's threats and insults. They were shocked and Sam was angry. "I still don't believe it. I'm going to call them and put it on speakerphone." Sam dialed Chrissy and put the phone down on the table. After a long pause, Chrissy demanded, "What did he say?" "He said you are making love with another man and that you love him." "It's complicated, Daddy," she pleaded. "I am trying to help this man who has suffered a terrible tragedy." Sam's face turned red. "Are you making love with him or not?" "We have been making love, but I still love Ron. I can't leave this man right now. I love him too." I was stunned. Chrissy had always been a daddy's girl and I assumed Sam would make excuses for her. "Chrissy," Sam's voice choked, "I never thought my daughter would become an immoral woman." "Daddy, please," she begged, but Sam hung up. Moments later the phone rang again. Mary started to answer it. "Leave it alone," Sam ordered, but Mary grabbed it anyway. I said, "Leave it alone," he yelled. She was stunned by her husband's anger and backed away. I was equally shocked. Silence filled the room as Sam and Mary processed the news. Finally Sam hugged me. "Ron, I'm so sorry. I can't believe our daughter did this to you. We will help you in any way we can. Mary will talk to her later and let you know how she is doing." "I'm too angry to talk to her right now." I had to leave to meet the locksmith. After putting the kids in the car, I hugged Sam and Mary and invited them over for dinner to talk more. On the way home Sally burst into tears. "Are you and Mom getting a divorce?" "Where did you hear that?" I asked. Ron Jr. said defiantly. I snuck back in and listened. I sighed. I realized they deserved to know. But how do I tell them without doing too much damage? Damn it, Chrissy, she hadn't thought about the kids when she was with her new man. "Yes, it looks like your mother and I are getting a divorce," I said quietly. "But why was Kyle crying?" "Your mother has fallen in love with another man," I explained. "You mean she's making love with another man?" Sally said tearfully. "I hate her. She's a total witch." "Sally, don't say that about your mother," I admonished. "About your mother," I admonished, even though I felt the same way. The locks were changed just in time. 10 minutes later Chrissy roared into the driveway. "You told my parents that, didn't you?" "I'm sure you called me a strumpet and a hooker," Chrissy screamed. "I thought you loved me." "Chrissy," I said sadly, "I love you with all my heart. But I won't accept you being with another man. You hurt me deeply when you called me an ugly middle-aged man that no woman would want to be with. How can you say you love me if you really believe what you're doing is right? It shouldn't matter if your parents know." Chrissy looked devastated. "Okay, I'm sorry, I didn't mean those things." She tried to apologize. "I was just angry because you called me a strumpet and a hooker. You promised to love, honor and cherish me. Shame on you. If you loved me you would accept the situation. I am not leaving you for him. I just love him too and I am trying to help him get younger and will eventually move on." "Chrissy," I said, shaking my head, "if you want to quote our vows, remember you promised to leave all others. A married woman does not sleep with young men just because they hurt. I have accepted that you are damaged goods and I don't want you in my life anymore. Accept it or don't you? Or don't, that's your choice." Chrissy turned red and seemed unsure, but then her eyes narrowed with new arrogance. She was breathing hard, clearly trying to figure out her next argument. At that moment I wish I didn't love her, but I still deeply did. "Ron," Chrissy said in a tone she used with the children, "stop being an idiot. I am your wife. I love you and I will come back to you when this man is well." I was so sad, but my love had turned to pure hate for her. "No, Chrissy, I don't know you. My wife has been loving and faithful to you. I don't recognize you. For all I know this is just one of many affairs. I can't trust you anymore." Chrissy's face flushed with anger. "This is not an affair and he is the first person I have been with since we were married. He is hurt and I will help him whether you agree or not. Suit yourself. I don't accept this. I don't trust you, so I will have a DNA test done on the children to make sure they are safe." "You're a total prick," Chrissy spat. "This is going to get very ugly. Remember what I told you about what would happen if you tried to divorce me? I'd rather die in poverty than be with a woman without morals," I said, looking down at her. She seemed unaware of the consequences coming her way. Just then a sheriff's car pulled up. The deputy approached Chrissy. "Are you Chrissy Jamon?" he asked. Yes, Chrissy replied, confused. Ma'am, this is a restraining order. You cannot enter the house and must stay 500 feet away. Do you understand? But this is my house, Chrissy stammered. All my stuff is inside. You have 15 minutes to get your stuff, the deputy said. I nodded in agreement. I will take my children into the backyard. I said I want to see my children, Chrissy said frantically. Ma'am, the deputy said, the restraining order is to protect your children from you. Chrissy turned around. You did this, you're taking my children away. No, you did this, I said calmly. You abandoned our house and left our children unattended at your lover's place. I did not abandon our house, and he is a wonderful man, Chrissy yelled. I'm helping him by sleeping with him. If he's so wonderful, go live with him and give him your love, or does he just want to use you for cheap pleasure? I responded, more for the benefit of Depew than Chrissy. I took the children into the backyard and told them that their mother was getting her things together to go to her new man's house, but I would let them see her before she left. When I brought them out, Kai was crying hard and ran into his mother's arms begging her not to go. To leave, please, Ron, Chrissy sobbed. Can't you see what you're doing to the children? Anger flared up in me, but I forced it down. Don't talk about the children. I haven't done anything to them. You took them to your lover's house while you were with him. Ron, why can't you understand? I can't abandon him, Chrissy said, saying, crying. Chrissy, you have already abandoned your husband, your children and your home. It is time for us to do the same to you. You did not consider the consequences of your actions. And now you are facing them. Ron Jr. asked why. Chrissy tried to explain to her son, but it was clear he did not believe her, but Sally let her mother have it. You're nothing but a selfish witch, she said, spitting in her mother's face. I had to grab Sally to stop her from hitting Chrissy and demanded that she apologize, but she refused. Chrissy was taken aback and fell to the ground sobbing. Sally and Chrissy had been fighting lately, which I thought was just teenage rebellion. Rebellion now, I feared Chrissy had permanently damaged their relationship. As I held Sally, Chrissy got up, ran to her car and drove away, banging on the steering wheel. Kyle tried to run after her, screaming, Mommy, please don't leave us. Ron Jr. caught him and brought him back. The deputy looked at me sadly. Mr. Jamon, I'm really sorry about this, Mr. Jamon. That night, Sam and Mary came over for dinner. I had planned to grill burgers, but Mary took over the kitchen and made meatloaf and her famous macaroni and cheese, which the kids loved. While Mary cooked, Sam and I had a couple of beers in the living room. I explained about the restraining order and how Chrissy had left the kids unattended at her lover's, which made Sam even sadder. Mary talked to Chrissy about an hour after you left, Sam said. Finally, how did that go? I asked, terribly. Sam admitted that Mary had tried to reason with Chrissy, but she's convinced she's right, and we're going to have to move on. Mary got very angry and told Chrissy not to call us anymore and that she would testify against her if it went to court. As you can imagine, the dinner was very subdued. The only bright spot was when Sam invited the kids to work on their go-karts the next day, which brought smiles to everyone's faces. Karts the next day, which brought smiles to Ron Jr. and Kyle. Sally, however, sat there with a pissed look on her face and didn't eat. I let it go, knowing that she was hurting as much as I was. On Friday, Chrissy was served with divorce papers at the hospital. Friends there told me that she lost it, cursing at the process server and vowing to ruin me. She went home, or rather to her lover's house. Dwight knew. He said she wasn't as good as she thought. Amber tried to get the restraining order reinstated, but Judge Johnson only modified it to allow Chrissy supervised visits at the house without her boyfriend present, warning her that any violation would end her visitation rights. Chrissy was happy at first, but her joy faded when the judge ordered her to pay child support, forcing her to go back to work full-time. After the hearing, the DNA results arrived. It took me almost half a day to open the envelope. When I did, I was filled with happiness. My children were truly mine. I reread the report several times to reassure myself. I realized that no matter what the results were, I would love my children. Even if Chrissy left her lover and came home, I wouldn't forgive her. She was a bad influence and needed to be kept away. I used all my personal days and vacation time to stay with the kids. When that ran out, Chrissy's parents helped Sam, and Mary refused to talk to Chrissy until she came to her senses. After a week of multiple daily calls, Sam blocked her number. The visitation schedule was left to Chrissy and me to work out, which meant our attorneys communicated our wishes. We agreed that Chrissy could visit Monday, Wednesday and Friday between 6 o'clock and 7 p.m. Mary volunteered to supervise, but I insisted on being there for the first visit to set clear rules. The first Monday, Chrissy arrived in a car I didn't recognize, probably her lover. She approached the house nervously and smiled tentatively. Hello, Ron, how are you? Mother. It's good to see you. Chrissy, you have to leave. I snapped. The judge said your lover can't be within 500 feet of this house. Horror spread across her face. I was furious. The judge was clear. No lover here. Tell him to leave now. And I won't tell the judge. Chrissy nodded quickly and went back to the car. I walked out and copied the license plate, then returned to the porch as the car drove away. Okay, he'll pick me up later, Chrissy said defiantly. Tell him to meet you down the street. I don't want him near the house. Chrissy's face filled with anger. Ron, I don't want him near the house. Ron, I'm tired of the way you treat me. You didn't have to steal money from our checking account or cancel my credit card, Chrissy. I didn't steal anything. The money was used to pay off the credit card and make 2 mortgage payments. I wanted to make sure the kids had a place to stay while we sorted things out. As for canceling the credit card, I didn't want to be stuck with any expenses you might charge while you were with your lover. Chrissy's face filled with anger. Your lover? Chrissy's face flushed with anger and arrogance. This is not an affair and he is not my lover. You are being a prick. Before I could respond, Mary stepped forward and slapped Chrissy across the face. Both Chrissy and I were stunned as she stepped back, stunned, staring at her mother. Chrissy, if you ever disrespect Ron again, I will rip that dress off you and slap your butt red if you want to see the kids in the living room. I'm going to talk to Ron first and then I'm going to join you. Be warned, if you say or do anything wrong I will throw you out of this house. Chrissy nodded meekly and went inside. Ron, I apologize for my brain-dead daughter, Mary said sympathetically. Thank you for sticking up for me, I said gratefully, and then I left. 2 weeks later the restraining order was lifted. As Dwight had mentioned, by then I was established as the primary caregiver and allowed to stay in the house. Chrissy continued to see her lover, so her child support remained. She could have unsupervised visits with the children in public, but she could not take them to her lover's house or have him present. After 4 months of delays, our first court date to finalize the divorce came before the attorney spoke. Judge Johnson asked if we had attended counseling. The attorneys admitted that we had not, so the judge ordered 8 sessions of marital counseling. Neither Chrissy nor I objected to counseling. I thought it was a waste of time, but I didn't want to upset the judge. Chrissy seemed to think she could convince me or the therapist that her actions were justified. The first session with therapist and Patterson was as I expected. Chrissy spent most of the hour explaining that what she was doing was the Christian thing to do. By the second week, and seemed shocked by Chrissy's arrogance, and gently questioned Chrissy's arguments, asking if it would be fair for me to start making love to another woman. I cringed, expecting an attack on my manhood, but this time it didn't happen. Chrissy didn't answer right away, but I didn't care. During the long divorce I made some changes. When the woman you love tells you you're not good enough, you want to prove her wrong, so I got a hair transplant. It cost about $4,000 and I debated it, not wanting to face the teasing, but since I was still on vacation I went for it. My hair was buzz cut, then plugs were put in from the back to the front. I stayed home the first week telling the kids it was a minor medical procedure. After 10 days I looked like my old self and my hair grew longer each week. After healing I started exercising and my hair grew longer each week. I also joined a gym and changed our meals to healthier options. The kids complained at first, missing fast food, cookies, ice cream, and pizza. I found fun, healthy recipes online, and while some didn't turn out great, we laughed and threw them out. Despite the pain of Chrissy's betrayal, I began to feel better about myself. My first day back at work, I got an ego boost. The receptionist, Trudy, gave me a strange look, but didn't tease me about my new hair. I blushed a little. Oh, I've been on a diet. I've lost 18 pounds. I'm aiming to lose another 5. She laughed and nodded. Well, it really suits you. If I weren't married I'd be all over you. Thanks for the ego boost, but according to my wife I'm just a middle-aged man with no love-making appeal. I tried to make a joke out of it, but it fell flat. By now everyone at the company knew about my situation. Storm clouds were gathering over Trudy's eyes. Chrissy's an idiot. Either that or she's got a screw loose. You're a great guy, Ron, and plenty of women would be thrilled to have you. Don't let Chrissy get in your head. That was the best boost I'd had in months. Suddenly I didn't feel like such a loser. I snapped back to the present when and asked my wife if she was married. Like I said, I was waiting for Chrissy to attack my manhood, but she didn't. I saw her eyeing me during our first meeting. I guess she couldn't say anymore that I had thinning hair and was overweight. That was another boost to my ego. Anyway, I just sat in my chair and waited while Chrissy seemed to be thinking about what she was going to say. I guess if he was trying to help this woman get over some tragedy, she said with arrogance, I would be okay with it. What if he told you that he loved this woman and that the lovemaking was very good? Again, I would accept it, Chrissy insisted, but he would have to assure me that the children and I would be taken care of. The session continued like this, with and trying to get Chrissy to see that her position was really ridiculous, but Chrissy refused to budge. As I feared, these sessions were just a waste of time. Chrissy would just use them to try to convince me that she was right. That would never happen, and as it was, the initial shock of what Chrissy was doing had begun to wear off. It's a funny thing about love, if it's not nurtured it begins to die. By the third week something had changed. Chrissy came to the session very subdued and said little, mostly just listening. Whatever had changed, it had set Chrissy back a bit. Maybe she wasn't as arrogant now because I was calmly and compassionately challenging her premise at every point. I also saw Chrissy checking me out when she wasn't thinking. I noticed I continued to work out and lost a few more pounds. I had even started doing a lot of yard work, which had given me a great tan a few months before the therapy sessions were scheduled. I made another change. I was becoming dissatisfied with my job. Oh, I loved fixing cars, and not just the engines. I got tremendous satisfaction from doing body work. I had been fixing old cars since I was 14 years old. I could do it all now. I saw owning my own business as a way to spend more time with my kids. I talked it over with Sam and he agreed to help me. I wanted to set up my own shop and start building a business, but I couldn't just quit my job and do it. I didn't have the money to support us until the business took off. We would starve before I could get it going. But since Sam's farm was also in an industrial zone, he agreed to let me start my business in an industrial zone. In fact, Sam's workshop had once been a horse barn that he had converted, so there was plenty of room for Sam and me once I got the business up and running. Sam agreed to lease me a piece of land on the road so I could build my own building. I expected to do a little body work at the dealership, but much of it was subcontracted out. With that in mind, I scaled back what I needed in terms of tools and equipment. One thing for sure, I would need to build a paint booth. Sam was not only okay with that, but actually helped me build it. I spent the savings I had freed up from our joint savings, plus a small loan from Sam, to finance the venture. I was starting part-time, mostly on weekends. I really enjoyed teaching Ron Jr. how to do things. Even Sally got her hands dirty and loved telling her friends how she helped rebuild an engine or paint a Corvette, which also made her more interesting to the boys at school. I was getting business by word of mouth, and soon I was wondering if I shouldn't go full-time. That decision actually came to a head when I was told that they needed me to work over the weekend to get some backup training. I couldn't do it because I had customers of my own that I needed to take care of. I figured I was going to get fired if I went to work over the weekend. I thought I was going to get fired when I went in to tell Bob that I couldn't work because I had my own business obligations. Got a minute, Bob? I asked, poking my head into his office. Sure, Ron, he waved me in. I'm glad you're working this weekend. We've got 44 cars coming in on Friday that need to be thoroughly checked and prepped. We've got to get them out at the end of the month. I winced a little at that, because most people don't realize that the factories offer special incentives to dealerships. If they sell a certain number of cars in a month, they get a discount off the invoice. For example, the factory might say, if you sell 300 cars this month, we'll take $150 off your cost. That's a $45,000 savings. But if the dealership sells 300 cars this month, we'll take $150 off your cost. That's a $45,000 savings. That's a $45,000 savings. But if the dealership only sells $299, they get nothing. That was critical to the dealership. That's just it, Bob, I said, feeling sweat trickle down my back. I can't work this weekend. I've kind of started my own business on the weekends and I have commitments. I'm sorry, Ron, Bob said curtly, but if you can't work this weekend, I may have to let you go. I understand, Bob, I said resignedly. I just hope there's no hard feelings. I've been trying to build up a business of my own. I want to spend more time with my kids and make some extra money for their college funds. I'm going to clean out my locker. I hate to lose Iran, Bob said sadly. Tell me about your business. Where are you located and what kind of jobs do you do? I explained that I started my business on my father's side. I've been working on my father's side and I've been working on my father's side and I've been working on my father's side for a long time. Fathers, go get a cup of coffee and come back here, Bob said, reaching for his phone. I didn't want any coffee, so I went to my locker and put my stuff in a box. Losing this job meant it was going to be tough for a while. The kids would have to be put on Chrissy's health insurance since I had taken them off mine, but still I was confident I could make it. I was turning away almost as much business as I was taking in. Bob motioned me into his office when he saw me coming down the hall. I've got a deal for you, Ron, he said. I've got a deal for you, Ron, he said excitedly. If you work this weekend, we'll reimburse you for any money you lose because your customers are unhappy. No, I shook my head. I couldn't do that to my customers. Wait, I'm not done yet, Bob said, pushing a piece of paper across the desk. I really need you this weekend. I also think you can convince your customers to wait a few days. If you can do that and your shop passes our inspection, we'll hire you as an independent contractor to do some of our body work. I was stunned, but I took the deal. I would occasionally go to the dealership if they had a problem and I wasn't busy. Sam also started helping me part-time, and Mary agreed to do my books. The only thing that was still screwed up in my life was my marriage, and by the fourth session I wanted to end it. I was pretty much beyond caring what Chrissy was doing with her new love. Don't get me wrong, it still hurt to think about my wife being with another man, but I wasn't thinking about it as much by our fifth session. I decided to go on the offensive. I thought if I attacked Chrissy hard enough, she might decide to end these useless sessions. I decided to confront her with the most hurtful thing she had said, that I was too unattractive to get another woman. When and asked if I had anything to say, I lit into Chrissy. Chrissy, I've decided that you are not only selfish, but also very nasty. How dare you tell the man you supposedly love that he is an ugly middle-aged man? No woman would ever want you. No woman would ever want you to hurt me in a way that I don't think I'll ever get over. Oh God, Ron, I'm so sorry. I'm so ashamed I ever said that. If I could take it back I would. I do love you, just not enough to give up your lover. Keep your sorrows to yourself. You need them more than I do. I snapped back. Chrissy burst into uncontrollable sobs. No matter what Anne or I said, we couldn't calm her down. Eventually Anne ended the session but gave us homework to do before the next one. I wasn't looking forward to it because I thought these sessions were a total waste of time. Some questions didn't make any sense to me, like what my favorite food and drink were or what kind of vehicle I drove, but one question really made me sit back and think, and that was, if you could change one thing, what would it be? I had worked on the questionnaire the night after the last session, but I put it away after reading that question. We turned in our papers at the next session, but Anne didn't even look at them. Instead she started by asking if we had any questions or if there was anything we wanted to discuss. I'd like to ask Chrissy a question, I said immediately. I don't see that we're getting anywhere with these sessions. You've made it clear that you're not going to leave your boyfriend Bruce Hartman, and that leaves no chance for reconciliation. Why don't we just stop this and get the divorce? How do you know his name? Chrissy asked in shock. The first time you came to visit the kids I got his license number. After that it wasn't hard to find out his name, but it doesn't really matter. I have no interest in getting back at him or even talking to him. I just don't care anymore. I want to move on. Chrissy. Chrissy looked up at me with the saddest eyes I've ever seen. I hated to see her in pain and I wanted to go over and hug her, but I knew that wouldn't solve anything, so I kept going. I know your lawyer isn't happy with the settlement I've offered so far. Well, I told my lawyer to offer some alternatives. I'm willing to give you more visitation with the kids. I'm also offering to pay you $1,000 a month in alimony for 3 years. I just want you out at any cost. I looked at Chrissy for a reaction, but all I saw was terrible sadness. She had made it perfectly clear that she was not going to stop seeing this guy, and I couldn't and wouldn't accept my wife having sex with another man for the life of me. I just didn't understand how she could possibly think that I would live with a situation like that. At this point it didn't matter. I just wanted out. I decided to push to end this farce. I know that what you said about me was partially true. It did hurt when you said it, and it hurt like hell when you said it. It hurt like hell when you said it, and I told you I didn't think I would ever get over it, but as time goes on I realize that I am getting over it anyway. As you can see, I have tried to fix myself. I don't think I am the man you thought I was when you took me on. You can take care of your gentleman friend for as long as you want, but I think it's time to end this, if only so you can start rebuilding a relationship with your children. Chrissy burst into tears and fled the room. I agreed. When Chrissy unloaded all this on me I was angry and filled with hatred, but now, months after the fact, I was just exhausted. I could see the pain this whole thing was causing not only me, Chrissy, her parents, and most importantly our children. I wanted it to stop. I was also not angry anymore that Chrissy was having sex with some guy. When I arrived for my final session with Anne, I was not only glad that Chrissy wasn't there, but also glad that this would be the end of the counseling. Ron, I want to commend you for your restraint throughout all of these sessions. And began, I know that this whole situation has been incredibly painful for you. After meeting with Chrissy last week, I think I finally understand what happened to your wife. I was now sitting on the edge of my chair. Maybe I would finally learn why Chrissy decided to destroy our marriage. Do you remember the homework I gave you? Do you remember the homework I gave you? She asked. I just nodded. I had forgotten about it and thought it was of little value in those counseling sessions. The way you both answered one particular question surprised me, and said as she pulled 2 pieces of paper out of her folder. The question was, if you could change one thing, what would it be? Do you remember? I nodded. You answered that you wished you could have been a better husband so that your wife would not have stopped loving you. When Chrissy heard that, she broke down and cried harder than ever. It took me quite a while to calm her down. I didn't know what to think or say or do, so I just sat there. Ron, your wife never stopped loving you. Yes, that's why she keeps sleeping with Bruce, because she loves me so much, I said sarcastically. And gave me a disapproving look, but then sighed. Ron, what I discovered about Chrissy was that she was going through a severe midlife crisis. As the kids got older, Chrissy felt her life slipping away from her. She is, and I suspect she's always been, a warm, caring person, but somewhere along the line she found Bruce, who needed her terribly. She terribly confused her desire to be young again and Bruce's terrible need for forgiveness for his wife's death with love. That doesn't change anything, I protested. Or is she still sleeping with Bruce? Actually no, she's not. Ron, really, this was news to me. Then why didn't she? Chrissy, tell me. And, sigh. I know it won't change how you feel right now, but you need to know the whole truth. Bruce left town the same day you told Chissy you were dating and just wanted to get on with the divorce she thought she already had. I thought about it, but I was right. It didn't change my mind. Too much had happened to go back. I had my life together now and I wanted to move on. I could never trust Chrissy again, and I didn't want to live like that. Most of all, I wanted the kids to have a relationship with their mother again. Sally's grades had plummeted since this whole mess started, and she was still angry with her mother. Kyle had become sullen. Withdrawn and acting out in school. This was perhaps the worst consequence of Chrissy's actions. Kyle was no longer the happy-go-lucky kid he once was. He was not angry or sullen, but whenever his mother's name came up, he changed the subject. Maybe I am wrong, maybe his reaction is worse than the two girls, I just don't know. One last thing, Ron said as she pulled out the second piece of paper. This is Chrissy's answer to the question about changing. She wrote that if she could change one thing, it would be that she never met Bruce Hartman. The divorce went through, and as agreed, Chrissy would visit the children on Wednesdays and Fridays. One evening, Chrissy asked if she could stay the night, and I replied with a smile, "No, the bed in the guest room is not that comfortable, it's better if you go back to your place, and next time don't think I'll ever be alone with you." As for Bruce H. Hartman, his story wasn't entirely true. Why did he leave town? I guess it was because of a severe beating he took outside a local bar, 5 broken ribs, a broken kneecap, 5 missing teeth and 2 cracked nuts. I had to call in a favor with some friends. It was worth it. The beating ensured he would never. As for Chrissy, she gradually rebuilt a loving relationship with her children, or should I say Sally and Kyle. No matter what Chrissy did, there was always a distance between her and Ron Jr. I would have thought Sally would hold a grudge, but she was the first to fully embrace her mother's return. Chrissy finally mended fences with her parents, although like Ron Jr. there was a slight chill with her father. Most Sundays we would have dinner there like a family, but we weren't. Chrissy kept apologizing for everything that had happened. I finally told her, "Please stop, I will never forgive you and it is pointless to try." I told her, "Oh please Chrissy, stop being so childish." I told her, "Stop being so childish. I have told you how things are going to be. I have no intention of arguing about it. The discussion is over. Accept it or don't accept it, that is your choice. We are never going to get back together. Even if you were the last woman on the planet and the fate of mankind depended on me sleeping with you, I would pass." 3 years later I got married. I married Sally's teacher. How we met and everything that happened is a story for another time, but what matters is that the kids love her and have accepted her as part of the family. Chrissy still hasn't accepted that I've moved on. Well, I'm not going to do anything about her. After all the discussion was over, she either accepts it or she doesn't.